All right. Well, hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Central Coast Clean City Coalition's webinar, Electrifying the Central Coast, Leading the Transition to Electric School Bus Fleets. My name is Alex Economou, and I'm the coordinator of the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition, or C5 for short. We've got a great webinar for you today on electric school buses, and I'm really excited to have you along for the ride. Before we get started, I've just got a few housekeeping items that I wanted to go over. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website, c-5.org, later on. If you have any questions that come up during the webinar, feel free to type them into the chat box and we will do our best to answer them during the webinar or at the Q&A session at the end. During the Q&A session, if you have a question that you would like to ask vocally, just use the raise your hand icon and I will unmute you. All right, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy today's webinar. So to kick things off, I'm going to be giving a brief introduction on C5, and then we'll pass things off to Desmond Ho with the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District and Vince Kirkuff at the SLO County Air Pollution Control District to give updates on available school bus incentives at their respective agencies. Next, we will receive an update from Dan Bertoldi of Central Coast Community Energy. Then we will have presentations on electric school bus offerings from the Lion Electric Company, A to Z Bus Sales, Bus West, and Creative Bus Sales. And then lastly, I will open things up for a moderated Q&A session with all of our panelists. For a little background, C5 is a group of local stakeholders whose mission is to expand the use of alternative fuels and alternative fueling infrastructure in Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. We work closely with local fleets and put on events like this webinar to promote alternative fuels and reduce the use of petroleum on the Central Coast. C5 is part of a broader network of clean cities coalitions across the country and is part of the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities program. As a part of the national network, C5 has access to a wide range of tools and resources from the Department of Energy and national labs and can provide technical assistance to local fleets to help support their transition to alternative fuels. And this map on the right shows the locations of other Clean Cities coalitions across the country. In addition to electricity, C5 is involved with a broad range of alternative fuels and fuel reduction technologies. Although today we will be focusing specifically on electricity, I wanted to give you a brief overview of the rest of the portfolio of technologies that C5 is involved with our local stakeholders. Here's my contact information, and I hope you enjoy the presentations from the rest of our panelists. First up, we have Desmond Ho with the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. Take it away, Desmond.
All right, thank you, Alex. And good morning, everybody. So my name is Desmond Ho, and I am an air quality specialist with the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. I work alongside our host, Alex, on our district's grants and incentives program. And today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the district's Clean Air Grants program, and then also going into specifics on our school bus grant program. Next slide, please. So the Clean Air Grant program has been around for over 30 years. And over the years, we have funded the replacement and the repower of hundreds of older and dirtier diesel engines with either cleaner diesels or alternative fuels such as electric, natural gas, or propane. Currently, our program covers the following categories. So we have first off-road, things like tractors. We also cover on-road trucks, obviously school buses, commercial marine vessels such as commercial fishing boats, agricultural pumps, and also infrastructure such as electric charging stations and alternative fueling stations. So this program allows the district to incentivize air quality benefits from sectors that might not have any regulation to do so. Next slide, please. The school bus grants specifically help fund the replacement of any diesel-powered school bus to either be repowered or replaced with a new school bus powered by either an electric motor, propane, or CNG. The amount of usage as well as the cost effectiveness. So cost effectiveness is basically how much emissions are reduced by the projects. So if we're looking at, for instance, 2 school buses, if they're used the same amount annually, the bus with the older and dirtier diesel engine is going to be more cost effective to replace, since we will get higher emissions reductions from it. For each project, the district is able to provide up to $150,000 or 80% of the total cost of it, whichever is lower. Now, in addition to the cost effectiveness, we also prioritize projects that are in or serving areas designated by the state of California's Assembly Bill 1550 to be a low-income community. After this, I'll pull up a map so you can see where the communities are. For our 2020 Clean Air Grants Program, it launched last week on the 8th, and we will be accepting applications until October 23rd. Next slide, please. So I spoke about the Assembly Bill 1550, or hereby referred to as AB 1550. So all the areas shaded in blue indicate areas in Santa Barbara County that we can see that are covered in the AB 1550 area. I did put a link on the bottom right, so if you'd like to see where your local AB 1550 areas are, feel free to pull that up so you can see. Next slide, please. All right, so you may be wondering at this point, how do I actually go about getting this funding? Well, first of all, you got to determine if you are eligible for funding. So this grant program is open to any school, public school district operating their own school buses. So any school bus that's proposed for a repower or replacement must be working and in service at the time of the application. So once an application is turned in, we will schedule an inspection to make sure that the bus is working and that everything matches up. So the bus must also be registered with the California Department of Motor Vehicle within Santa Barbara County for the last 2 years. You must be able to provide records of this, and the bus must obviously be diesel. Now, there's also a much larger criteria list that must be met. So please see our website with the link right there, because I'd rather not bore you with all the details. Next slide, please. So how does that grant process actually work? So we're starting at the top left here. After you submit the application, we will be reviewing it internally to make sure that it is complete, and we reach out to you if anything is missing or needs correction. Now, as part of the internal review, and as we said earlier, we'll also schedule an in-person inspection of the bus. And once that checks out, we do calculations, and then we provide the school districts with the grant offer. If the offer is accepted, then there'll be another round of internal review prior to the grant being fully executed. So once the grant is executed, then the school district can order and purchase the new school bus or the repower, whichever it may be. Now, once the new engine or the new school bus arrives, we do another inspection to make sure that the bus specification agrees with the grant agreement. And the old school bus will be then sent off to a dismantler where the chassis will be cut, and then also a hole will be put into the engine block to make sure that it renders the bus unusable. And at that point, the school district will receive a reimbursement check agreed upon on the grant agreement. So this is a reimbursement program because the money is not provided up front, okay? And after the school districts get their money, they'll be required to do an annual report, which is just reporting on mileage and usage until the number of years that's agreed upon is complete. Next slide, please. So I understand that I provided you a lot of information in a short amount of time. So here is my contact information. If you have any additional questions about school buses, I'm here to help. And again, our grant applications this year is accepted from September 8th until October 23rd. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Desmond. Next up, we will have Vince Kirchhoff with the San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District.
Okay, thanks, Alex. My name is Vince Kirchhoff with the San Luis County Air Pollution Control District, Air Quality Specialist. And we've had our grant program, well, for school buses since 2001. You see the slide here mentions that we've done 43 replacement buses in San Luis County, and most of those have been diesel. A couple have been propane or CNG, and only one to date has been an electric bus, which Paso Robles Unified School District is scheduled to take delivery of tomorrow. So we're very happy to see that project come to fruition, and we're working with Paso Robles on a second bus for their fleet, a second electric bus. Now our school bus grant program is currently closed. We typically have an open application period to establish an eligibility list for local school districts. And we did that earlier this year. We got 13 applications and we chose 2 of them for funding. Those buses were both diesels. Next slide, please, Alex. So our funding for electric school buses, we typically will pick up about half of the price of the new bus. Most of the electric buses are running around $400,000, and so the APCD can usually pick up about $200,000 on that. Now, depending on the funding source, just like Desmond was just saying, we do have a cost effectiveness threshold for some of our funding. So the amount of the award might be limited by that, depending on the emission reductions achieved by the project. So basically, we're looking at co-funding for the other half of the project, for the other half of the purchase price. In the past, that's been available through the state's HVIP program, the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Voucher Incentive Project. And in fact, Paso Robles is that's what they used for their first bus, and what they are counting on using or planning on using for their second bus. But they changed the rules for HVIP last year, and so we're no longer allowed to stack those funds with other state money. So it kind of limits the funding opportunities with HVIP. And then the other thing with HVIP is it's proven to be very popular, and it's currently closed because it was oversubscribed. And while they are expecting some additional funding early next year, you know, that funding, it comes from the greenhouse gas reduction funds. It's funded by cap and trade offsets. So future funding for that is dependent on the success of those offset sales and kind of dependent on the health of the state's economy in general. So another potential funding source starting next summer would be available from 3C Energy, Central Coast Community Energy, formerly Monterey Bay Community Power, for their customers. We haven't finalized the details of the program with 3C Energy yet, but we have had preliminary talks with them. and we're working in the direction of having a joint program where we would co-fund electric buses with them. Next slide, please, Alex. So in addition to school buses, SLO County APCD funds a lot of other incentive project categories, including EV infrastructure or school bus charging infrastructure, and as well as things like old car buyback and agricultural tractor replacements, wood burning stove and fireplace replacements. And in recent years, our total incentive budget has been about $1.7 million annually, with about $250,000, give or take, of that per year for school buses. So with only $250,000 to spend on school buses, we do have funding limitations, and so we typically will fund only 1 or 2 school buses per year. And we have to try to spend that money equitably throughout the county. So we will continue to make funds available to all school districts in the county, whether they are inside or outside of 3C Energy's service area. So we will continue to fund diesel and alt fuel buses in addition to the electric buses. One thing I would stress to the school districts and to the bus dealers is to not overlook the need for charging infrastructure. I know when we were working with Pastor Robles, it kind of turned into an issue. They had to get the permits, and it can get kind of complicated and kind of costly to do the charging infrastructure. So that's something to plan on from the get-go when you are looking at electric buses. It takes time to plan it and design it and construct it. We've seen quotations for charging infrastructure, as little as $3,200 and up to like $175,000. So the good news is we have grants available that can fund up to 100% of the charging infrastructure. Currently, we have about $60,000 in that fund, which is available for infrastructure on a first come, first served basis. Next week, we're taking an item to our board for the AB 617 CAP incentives, which is going to be about $400,000, which will be available on a competitive basis for various project categories. But the categories do include school buses and charging infrastructure. So those projects will be ranked, like criteria would include things like the benefit to low income community and whether it's zero emission technology. So the application for that funding will run through October and November. Typically, we bring another item to our board in January for our annual grant program and our school buses. That's when we typically bring the $250,000 item. That might change for next year, depending on the program that we finally decide on with 3C Energy, as far as what's going to go towards diesel buses, what's going to go towards electric buses, and so our program for next year is still in a little bit of flux. So next slide, please, Alex. This has my contact information, and it also has our website that has the information about our grant programs, available funding. It has the applications and such. So thank you for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Vince. Next up, we've got Dan Bertoldi, who is the Interim Director of Energy Programs at Central Coast Community Energy.
Thank you very much, Alex. I am trying to start my video, but it is telling me, oh, here we go. Okay. All right, thanks very much, Alex. Really glad to be here today to be speaking with you all. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So in June of 2020 of this year, we launched the Zero Emission School Bus Program here in the Monterey Bay region. This was a collaborative effort between Central Coast Community Energy and the Monterey Bay Air Resource District. You know, MBARD was tasked with administering this program. They dealt with the bus manufacturers and the school districts. Central Coast Community Energy, then referred to, or then called Monterey Bay Community Power. We provided, you know, support on outreach, and then we provided funding support. So our funding level was $200,000 per bus per school district. MBARD was able to cover the rest of the cost. So typically these buses cost around $400,000, which is, you know, kind of your typical sale cost. So MBARD was able to cobble together the rest of the funds through a variety of different California state grants that they had received. I think one of the things that made this program so successful was MBARD's pre-existing relationship with the school districts as well as the bus manufacturers. This provided a really smooth and kind of seamless application process. I think one of the differences between this program and some of the programs that we've heard about today, this it wasn't a reimbursement program. Essentially, the school districts would receive a bus voucher, and so I do not believe there was any cost that they would have to put down. The MBARD would provide them with a voucher, and then you know, essentially facilitate the delivery of the bus, and so the school district would receive a bus, you know, 100% covered. So I also want to point out that MBARD did provide an additional $20,000 for EV infrastructure under this program. So that was definitely another boost to make this program even that more successful. One other note, just in terms of the funding that Central Coast Community Energy provides, in order to be eligible, the school district must be located within 3CE's service territory and to be our customer at the time of application. You know, we received a great amount of interest in this program when we launched in June. Within the first day, we received 6 applications, which essentially covered the amount of funding that Central Coast Community Energy put up, which for this year was $1.2 million total, which, you know, at $200,000 per bus, was able to get us 6 buses. Those applications are still being processed, but we are moving forward with each of them. Next slide, please, Alex. So moving forward into our next fiscal year, which is going to start October 1st, we have gotten an approved budget for another $2.2 million in incentives at $200,000 per bus. That covers that covers 11 school buses. So our plan is to extend funding for the Monterey Bay region, extend our partnership with the Monterey Bay Air Resources District, and essentially re-upping that program at $1.2 million, another 6 buses. And then we're looking to establish this program and partnering with our air our APCDs, so Santa Barbara County APCD and SLO County APCD, we've been talking to about establishing this type of program in our enrolling communities, which are going to be enrolling in 2021. So that's our SLO County cities, and then Santa Barbara County, as well as the cities that are enrolling within our service. Just kind of one note about that. This program would only be able to launch once those enrolling communities have been, first of all, fully enrolled, and that's going to begin in January, and that's going to be a process. And then, also, once they are essentially vested within our program fund. So once we have generated revenue through those communities, through their energy rates, then they would be eligible for this funding. And so we anticipate that to be sometime in spring, would be the spring of 2021 is going to be the earliest that we're going to be able to establish this program. But we're certainly very excited to roll this program out in SLO and Santa Barbara counties, and to re-extend the funding in Monterey Bay region. This is definitely a program that is near and dear to our agency's heart. We feel that this program provides great benefit to our communities, to our school children. It shows that we are committed to electrifying the way that we transport our little ones, and that there's education involved in this as well. It's teaching our the next generation about clean transportation, which we feel is immensely important and has just a ton of value. Next slide, please, Alex. If anybody has any questions on the program that we rolled out in 2020 here in Monterey Bay region, or in our future program that we're going to be launching in October of 2021, and then down in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties in next year, please give me please contact me. I didn't put our new web address here on this slide, but if you just go to 3cenergy.org, that is our new URL. It's been a little challenging to get Google to recognize that, so I just wanted to put that out there. But thank you very much for having me here today, and certainly looking forward to the next presenters. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dan. I just wanted to answer a really quick question that I got from one of the attendees. The question is, are the districts only allowed to receive funding from the county where they are located? So for air pollution control district funding, the school district would have to be within the boundaries of that county. For the Central Coast Community Energy funding, they would just have to be within a community who is enrolled with Central Coast Community Energy. So I hope that answers that question, but feel free to follow up if you have further questions. All right, next up, we will have Eddie Camano, who is a regional sales manager with the Lion Electric Company.
All right, can you guys hear me? Audio's okay? Video's okay. If you can't hear or see me, raise your hand. I can't see or hear anyone else either. Actually, that's not true. But anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for hosting this as well, Alex. Wanted to kind of start off by answering some questions that some of the local school districts kind of had, which was, how reliable is this technology that we have today? So if you can jump onto the next slide, I kind of go into a little brief history of how long EV's been around. And EVs started in the early 1800s, which a lot of people really aren't aware of. They really started gaining popularity in the early 1900s, hitting peak in 1912. That made up 30% of all vehicle sales. That's including horse and carriage back in 1912. So if you jump onto the next slide, I touch base a little more on why EV disappeared in the mid 1900s. Prices of fuel skyrocketed. The electric starter actually had a lot to do with that when Henry Ford pushed that out, no more hand cranking. But we did see kind of a revival in EV in the mid 1990s, and that was in part due to the fuel scare in the late 60s, early 70s, and that led to the South Coast Air Quality Management District teaming up with some federal agencies to put together some potential funding for big automakers. And so that's when we see Toyota come out with the Prius, GM came out with their vehicle, and then that pushed into the early 2000s. So if you jump over to the next slide, you see the Lotus Elite from Tesla that came out in 2006, really kind of setting themselves in that world of EV. Lion Electric launches in 2008. We're a Canadian-based company. From 2008 to about 2013, the cost of batteries drastically drops, really giving an opportunity for a lot of automakers to start offering better incentives on their vehicles. And in California, we're very fortunate to have a lot of state and government incentives as well. So if you jump on to the next slide, a lot of people will ask, is electric right for me? So they gather, all right, it's a pretty stable technology. It's still evolving, but it might not be right for everyone. And I do ask this question, do you have a fleet? Because I get a lot of people that they are so gung-ho about it, and they're like wondering, okay, I don't have any school buses right now, but the reason I didn't have it is because of all the maintenance, the fuel, all these things that I didn't really want to have to deal with. Now they're seeing, oh, you know what, electric, I don't have to deal with all that. I don't have to have a spill prevention plan to worry about. So with that in mind, I'll kind of say, all right, let's look at how many miles your vehicles are driving right now if you're using a third party or if you're using your own. So in some instances, and as a salesperson, I could shoot myself in the foot for doing this, but the reality is if you have 2 buses and you're only driving 250 miles a day per bus, EV might not be that fit for you. But maybe you have a 10 bus fleet and only 2 of those buses are doing 250 miles a day and the others are doing between 80 and 150. There's absolutely going to be a platform that'll fit your needs. So jump on to the next slide. So why aren't EVs more popular today? And that goes back to, well, it looks like a picture didn't pop up for us, but it was range anxiety. So, we've all been on those long highway trips where we are 100 and some miles away from the next fuel station. Well, in EV, you might be, a few hundred miles away from your next charging station. Tesla's done a good job of setting that up. That is proprietary to Tesla. And so, everyone I think in the industry is working together to kind of make it a little more friendly for us to start really supporting, heavier duty and medium duty EVs such as school bus and truck. The other fear that people might have is, okay, let's say I'm going to start pushing it. I have a 200-mile range bus and I'm doing 200 miles a day, but I don't want to limit myself to that cushion. So you want to charge in between. You probably need 4 to 5 hours with the fastest chargers available right now to fill up from 0 to 100. So again, those are some of the concerns. And when people ask why isn't EV more popular today, those are it. But those technologies are changing day by day. And ultimately, fear of the unknown. We've all bought that brand new car, and we won't drive it a quarter past empty. Versus, we have our old Betsy that we know we can drive for 50 miles with that e-light on and be totally confident that it'll get us home, no problem. So jump over to the next slide, please, Alex. So with that in mind, why should you go electric? Your total cost of ownership drastically gets reduced. You don't have oil changes, you don't have maintenance on a diesel or any combustion vehicle for that matter. So really your return on investment comes back fairly quickly, depending on whether you're getting aid from an APCD or not. But, I have a little bit of background in heavy duty vehicles with a family that owns a trucking company. So I can tell you, a vehicle can go down for weeks and in some cases months. And a lot of school districts can kind of vouch for that depending on what the issue is. But that really kind of goes away. Yeah, you still have your standard chassis replacements, but honestly, those are so simple maintenances in comparison to having to replace an entire diesel engine or re-sleeve or replace coppers, things that we won't get into. But that goes away with electric, one of the beauties there. Next slide, Alex. So some of you guys might be wondering, well, who is Eddie? Who is Lion? Why do they get to come up and talk about electric? What do they know? And so I'll give you brief background on myself. Is I actually don't come from the school bus sales. I come from the environmental field. I've worked in environmental compliance for over 8 years. Was brought on board to Lion to help kind of change that dynamic and really instill the message that they're trying to push, which is an environmental eco-friendly platform. So Lion is a 100% EV dedicated manufacturer. We don't buy someone else's product and retrofit ours onto it. When you look at our bus, everything on here was built for us by us, with a few exceptions that everyone else goes and picks off a shelf, such as brake parts, suspension parts, differentials, things like that. So if you jump over to the next slide, Alex. So, again, Lion being purpose-built to be electric, we have been around for quite some time. We have, if you jump over to the next slide, Alex, sorry. We have a little over 300 employees with over 300 vehicles on the ground today. And we're deploying, right now, because of COVID, on average, 1 to 2 vehicles a week. But something to keep in mind about Lion specifically is we don't have a third-party dealer representing us. We are the dealer. So much like Tesla, you're dealing direct. Jump over to the next slide. So, maintenance and service, again, that's something that comes up a lot. People get really concerned with electric. Who's going to work on my bus if something happens? You guys only have a handful of service centers. We don't really need a lot of service centers because the reality is 9 out of 10 times we'll be able to do most of the repairs and services on site, with the exception of maybe someone crashing into your bus. And then at that point, we got to take it to one of our body service centers. But we do have a handful. We just added Phoenix, Arizona. We just got the keys a couple weeks ago. So that one's moving forward. Jump over to the next slide, Alex. So charging, I know charging's been touched based on a little bit. Won't go too deep into that, but that's a big concern because it could be very expensive depending on which platform you go with. There's commonly known as level 2, level 3 chargers. I'll break it down for most people very simply. You'll have a charger that's rated at a certain kilowatt per hour. You take your bus and you figure out how much battery your bus has, whether it has 130, 140, 150, or 200 kilowatt hours. Divide that by what the charger's capable. You might want to take off 20% of that charger's capability. So if it's a 19.2, it might realistically only be giving you 14 or 15 kilowatts an hour. So just to give you guys a little bit of insight how charging works, you can do the math pretty simple. Jump over to the next slide, Alex, please. So a lot of you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong for the San Luis Obispo area, but a lot of you do belong to SoCal Edison. They have an amazing program which really helps subsidize your cost of infrastructure. I know if you go on their website, it says it's closed. I promise you, I just spoke with one of their representatives yesterday. It's not closed. It's still absolutely open. You can use the link here to go and check it out. You can also call us if you have any questions. So I think my time's up, but again, my name is Eddie with Lion Electric. I hope you guys found the information useful. The very last slide, Alex, has my name and my email with phone number, and Claire Garcia, who is also on this call. She knows a ton about different grants and can absolutely help stack some funding and help you guys walk through, again, 100% EV dedicated in this arena.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Next up, we've got Brandon Blum, who is the Director of New School Bus Sales at A to Z Bus Sales.
Thank you, Alex. Before I get started, just a big thank you to the Central Coast Community Energy, as well as Alex and your team here, SLO and Santa Barbara APCDs for putting this together. It's a great opportunity for education and for everyone to kind of understand what are some of the options that are available. I'm Brandon Bloom with A to Z Bus Sales. We have been the Bluebird dealer here in California and have been serving school districts for over 40 years. Bluebird has been building buses for over 90 years, and we're proud to be partnered with Cummins on our electric technology side, who have been innovating drivetrains for over 100 years. Alex, go ahead, let's move on to the next slide. So Bluebird has been the alternative fuel leader in the industry since the early 90s. They've built over 20,000 alternative fuel school buses. And it's important to note that for a school district, you have to have options. You have to look at duty cycles, routes, to determine what's going to be the best deployment for your fleet. We're proud to be able to offer low NOx 0.02 propane school buses. We have 0.02 CNG buses, natural gas, as well as now the zero emission battery electric buses powered by Cummins. Next slide. So today, obviously the focus is on electric. Most people are familiar with our propane and CNG as well as diesel offerings. So spend a little bit of time talking about electric. Really, we've seen a huge increase in interest in electric over the past 4 years. A lot of this is being driven through the grant funds that are available. But now that buses are deployed and we have kind of the proof of how these are performing, a lot of case studies are taking place right now. We're seeing a huge reduction in maintenance costs for districts, huge savings in fuel cost or the equivalent of fuel costs. And now we're really opening up new areas, which are very exciting with vehicle to grid technology, V2G, that will continue to help drive down the costs of these purchases. Go ahead, Alex. Thank you. So Bluebird was the first OEM manufacturer to embrace electric technology. They got involved with battery-powered school buses in the 90s, actually delivered several electric buses for the Summer Olympics in 1996. Obviously, technology has improved vastly since then, and we're proud to be partnered with Cummins right now with their power drive system on the Type C and D buses. Bluebird is the only manufacturer to have produced and deployed electric school buses in Type A, Type C, and Type D. We have delivered over 200 electric buses here in California. We also offer now level 2 and DC fast charge as a standard option on all Type C and D buses, meaning every bus you order, you can choose to charge it with DC fast charge or with your traditional level 2. V2G is also standard on all buses. Go ahead, Alex, to the next slide. So this slide speaks to some of the savings that districts are seeing, some of the equivalencies when it comes to miles per gallon, the equivalent with electric. We're seeing consistently around 25 to 34 miles per gallon, a huge savings. In addition to the reduced maintenance, there are also a lot of options with low carbon fuel credits and other alternatives that can continue to drive down your costs when it comes to electric vehicles. Go ahead, Alex. I know it was mentioned, I think Vince mentioned the importance of infrastructure when it comes to purchasing your electric buses. And this is something that, as the dealer here in California, we really try to be with you through the whole purchasing cycle. So we have a dedicated grant coordinator that can help your district to identify which buses would be available and to source grants. We also assist on the infrastructure side, helping districts to make sure that you have the site evaluations, that you're looking at future plans as well, and not just putting in the infrastructure for the 1 or 2 buses you might be receiving today, but looking ahead, where are you going to be 5 years, 10 years down the road? So these are critical pieces that you want to consider and really look at the future of how you want to deploy these vehicles. Next slide. And in addition to the help with grants and infrastructure, we also spend a lot of time with each district, making sure that you're fully trained. We want any electric vehicle to be an easy integration into your fleet. So we include technician training, safety and preventative maintenance training, driver training and best practices, everything we can do to help this be an easy integration. In addition, Blue Bird has their Blue Bird Academy with more advanced training. So that way your technicians will know how to work on these buses, how to service them. We also are fortunate to have road service. There's a lot that can be done through the telematics on these buses, through parameter changes. And with Cummins as the support facilities, you're able to take this to any Cummins dealer and have a technician that has already been trained on the electric platform. Next slide. And that's it from us. So again, Brandon with A to Z Bus Sales, we're excited about this technology and where this is headed. Excited to support the incentive programs that are available and to really take time with your district to make sure that this is the best decision for you when you're looking at electric or any other fuel type. And appreciate the time, and that's it from us. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Next up, we have Todd Franson, who is a school bus sales manager with Bus West.
Good morning. I'm Todd Franson. I'm the sales manager for Bus West, as Alex said. Going third is a, I'm going to try not to repeat or try to repeat anything that's already been said. The history lesson was nice from Lion. Thomas Built Buses started in the trolley business, and we're making electric trolleys back in the day. So we grew up on the heritage of electric vehicles. We have, I'm just gonna go through and try not to duplicate, like I said. We have a different technology. We don't have options in battery and range. We are specifically going with Proterra's charging system, batteries, drivetrain, and we also are the only ones that are using a transmission. And we are exclusively DC fast charging because we believe that the future is in fast charging, and that's the way the industry is going. Alex, next slide, please. We are offering a 220 kilowatt battery system. The technology, of course, is improving at such a high rate that that is soon to be going up with the same package. A lot of the battery technology is, is important in your choice in vehicles. We get our batteries from Proterra. The battery packs are made in California, in the Bay Area, and Proterra is our supplier, and it's encased in a ballistic aluminum and has gone through stringent testing. I want to bring up the fact that, Vince was talking about the infrastructure. Well, the bottom line is that the bus part, building the bus, the drivetrain, all that is the easy part. There is so much afterthought or research and things that you have to get ready for your bus and infrastructure is the first step. So I encourage everybody to get your electric companies involved and start the process of your electrification of your fleets by getting with them to start your infrastructure and know what your costs and infrastructure costs are going to be. Alex, next slide, please. Proterra, Thomas Built Bus, and Freightliner. The relationship that we have between all of us is that Thomas Built Buses is owned by Freightliner Custom Chassis. Proterra is our supplier of our engines, basically our motors and our fuel supply, which is the batteries. And we are assembling everything down the same assembly line, no matter what your powertrain or fuel selection is. So if you are ordering a propane vehicle, a diesel vehicle, CNG vehicle, it's all going down the same assembly line. We're assembling them in no specific order. We could have a CNG bus go right behind a diesel bus, go right behind an electric vehicle. So that is our partnership with Proterra and Thomas Built Buses. We're up the street from Gaffney where the chassis is made, and then we mount the body right onto the electric chassis. Next slide. So Proterra has a big history in electrifying buses. So currently, this slide is actually outdated by a little bit, but at the time they had 700 buses sold to 90 customers across the United States. Next slide. One of the unique features of the Thomas Built Bus EV, Julie, is that is the battery packs. So the battery packs are all encased in this ballistic power pack, and it's designed to have all the each cell is cooled, and it is controlled by a management system. So what we do at Thomas is we install each one of these power packs is 110 kilowatts. So on the Thomas Built Bus, we decided that we were going to put 2 of them on there to get a range around 140 miles per charge. If you go all the way to the city buses, they've put in up to 4 of these and get extensive range over 300 miles. I believe that they've tested it to go 360 miles on a charge. We chose to only put 2 on here because of the pricing, and most of the cost in electrifying a vehicle is in the battery system. Next slide, Alex. So as Brandon had said, the people before me, I mean, the operating costs we've found to be a lot less than the current fuel technologies. It's got greater efficiency, performance. The battery packs and all the weight is in between the axles, which is optimal. We have plenty of power and torque with our with the drivetrains. That's across all electric vehicles. We have a 2-speed transmission, which is unique, and that is to have it so that we can have a greater range, because you're not having constant power, that you have 2 speeds of power. Um, and we all, I believe we all have regenerative braking, which, puts energy back into the battery when you're not on the throttle. Next slide, Alex. Since we have our partnership with Proterra, Proterra has their own infrastructure and charging division. They have the ability to have a turnkey system. So, I mean, we could come in with Bus West, Thomas, and Proterra, basically come in and do a whole turnkey, which is a nice thing to have. It doesn't work for everybody. It starts with fleet sizes and how much you are getting in grant funding for your infrastructure. This doesn't mean that Proterra is our only avenue for chargers. It's just something that we have available to the customer to start from. They will contract out everything from digging the dirt to installing the chargers to dealing with the electric companies and getting the proper systems inside. Next slide. So here's basically a system that Proterra has put in for a huge fleet of EV transit buses. It takes a lot of juice. So I just wanted to give everybody a little what a huge fleet would look like for the infrastructure charging system setup. Next slide. So with that, it's the end of my presentation. I hope that this gains ground. It looks like California is heading in this direction. We're excited to supply same technology that is being used in the transit industry to school buses, and we hope to continue the momentum in the state of California with the electric school bus. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. And last, but certainly not least, we have Jason Hohelek. Apologize if I butcher your name, who is a California school bus sales manager with Creative Bus Sales. All right, thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Alex. And you nailed my pronunciation. I appreciate that. A lot of years of punishment. So what we have here, so my name is Jason Hohelek with Creative Bus Sales, and I want to thank Alex, Vince, and Desmond and Dan for the opportunity to present here on the offerings for Creative Bus Sales. We have locations nationwide, and we specialize in school bus here in California. So we can go to the next slide. So Creative has 3 products, 3 different manufacturers, one being the IC. We are the IC school bus dealer here in California. We will have a conventional style only. So that's what's pictured here with 2 options. We have a 218 wheelbase with a 42 passenger wheelchair. We can go full capacity up to 56 passenger on that. And then we have a 276-inch wheelbase, which is a 76 passenger, and that's just under a 40-foot conventional style bus. We have the Green Power school bus, which is a 40-foot transit style purpose-built bus. It's 90 passengers, so because it's purpose-built, a monocoque chassis design, so we don't utilize a standard ladder chassis with an engine compartment as a combustion engine would be. So you have seating that goes to the back of the wall so we can get 90 passengers in there. And then we recently, back in May, we were a StarCraft school bus dealer, and StarCraft was purchased by Rev, who is the manufacturer for Collins School Bus. So Rev will be manufacturing, or is manufacturing currently, the Magellan School Bus, and we will have that. I don't have an image here. We will have that shortly, but that is also on a Ford E450 chassis, and we will have the electrification of a 13-passenger wheelchair up to a 23-passenger fully ambulatory bus. And again, that is a cutaway type A school bus. Alex, you can go to the next slide, please. So speaking of infrastructure and kind of the unique aspects of electric and electrification of a fleet, IC School Bus has been working with Volkswagen and a few other manufacturers to establish what they call the Next E-Mobility Solutions. So Next E-Mobility Solutions is their design team internally at Navistar, who's the parent company of IC Bus and International Truck. So what IC Bus has come up with is their electrification team is designing in-house their electric package, which we will have released for demos in November. And we've already started taking orders and building buses for deployment on the CEC and some other grant opportunities. But their team is electrification only design to take the standard chassis setup, as I spoke to with the CE, and electrifying that chassis. They have also worked with infrastructure teams we have in charge here in California that will do a site survey analysis once we start the conversations about electric and electrification of a fleet. They come out, do a site analysis, check your power grid, and work with the local utilities to identify grants that are available and kind of move that conversation forward early on in the process. And we found out through the deployment over the last 2 years of school buses that kind of procuring the school buses is the easy part. The infrastructure is where we really have hit some hurdles. So we've identified internally, and I think Lion has done the same thing with Bluebird and with Thomas, is we have to be more forward thinking with the infrastructure side and be more involved with that conversation. And I think to Vince's point, with Paso and some other schools, that was kind of an afterthought, unfortunately. And we've learned our lesson. So now we have kind of grouped and identified that it is vital that we have the infrastructure aspect or component identified up front. Next slide. So with the CE school bus, we have 3 battery options. One is a 105 kilowatt, 70 miles, which is on the lower end. That's probably, we don't really, Creative's not looking at that as more functional. It's strictly just an option with a single battery pack. Our focus is going to be the 210 and 315 kilowatt package. So the 210 will be available on the 218 wheelbase, and the 315 will be available on the 276 inch wheelbase, as well as we will have the 210 available on the 218 wheelbase. So, or excuse me, the 276 inch wheelbase. So we will have the option for a 76 passenger that can have that conservative side 135 miles. And we also have a package to go 200 plus miles with a 315 kilowatt, which we are excited for. That was one of the conversations, and I think Eddie spoke to it earlier with range anxiety. How do we have an electric school bus that we can only go, 80 to 110 miles on a good charge? So we've always looked at if we can hit that 200 mile threshold. I think we're moving forward. We're making progress, and we're excited about that. So in November, we will be setting up some ride and drives throughout California, and the point of emphasis will be the Central Coast as well. Next slide. So again, just some vehicle highlights. We talked about standard combo CCS1 AC DC charging. That is the standard, and I think Bluebird has gone that direction as well. So you have the option for level 2 and DC fast charging with the same charge port. So vehicle to grid capacity or capability. I know that there's several utilities that are running some pilot programs to ensure that they are established or they're set up, but I think the majority of the manufacturers have moved forward with ensuring that their vehicles are capable of vehicle to grid. Now it's the utility side to ensure that they can actually take that power and utilize it back to the grid. Within the IC, of course, we have the International Vast Dealer Network. Same thing with Thomas and Bluebird utilizing Cummins. We have the international network as well as the Next Team EV training, which is critical for all electric deployments, whether it's the drivers, ensuring that they are able to perform or drive that vehicle and the inspection aspect of it, but really maximizing or optimizing that range of that bus. We always laugh with diesel, you drive it like you stole it. Well, electric's a little bit different. We need to ensure the drivers are trained accordingly so that they're maximizing the energy usage of that vehicle. And then, of course, the adaptive solution, that goes back to having a whole 360 team from the site survey for infrastructure, working with the energy companies, the utilities, and then, of course, identifying that we are equipping this bus with the correct equipment for that school, whether it's a wheelchair option or a full ambulatory option. And then HVAC is a standard feature on the school buses. And then just from a vehicle charge port location, ensuring that the design, and that goes through the site survey, is that we have the charging port, which sounds simple enough, but you don't want to have a parking lot set up with charging stations where, you know, the buses have to be changed. The process of parking is different than what we typically would have. Next slide. So this goes back to kind of the fundamentals. I won't go into depth on this. We've already covered it with a few other presentations, but just a AC level 2 charging, and then the DC fast charge. And of course, IC utilizes the combo CCS charge, so you will have both options available to you. And I think this is important for the growth of electric, so that we have, you know, when there's a charging station on the corridor, whether it's the 101, the 5, the 99, that you have the option to pull in and really top off, or even going to another school after a trip. You can pull in and utilize their charging station, whether they have a DC fast charge, or if they don't, they just have level 2, you have that option available to you. So it's just improving the infrastructure across the state for school bus and transit applications. Next slide. Well, this one didn't come through very well, but it is the basically with the Next IQ, it's consulting, charging, constructing, and connecting, having that 360 review from the IC team and with Creative itself. So that's kind of going back to just having the full implementation of service and support when we're deploying school buses. And next slide. Well, there we go. Okay. So that, yeah, talking about the consulting and charging. So, okay, so the next product we have is the Green Power. This is our purpose-built, yeah, we're fine here, Alex, that's fine. The purpose-built Green Power school bus. So again, this is purpose-built. It's a monocoque chassis design, so we don't utilize a ladder chassis. The batteries are set up within compartments or modules within the bus. The range or the battery pack setup we have is 194 kilowatt. That's standard. Range is, again, based on, there's so many variables that go in. I hate quoting the range, but On a conservative side, we're looking at 140 to 160 mile range based on the 194 kilowatt option. Up to 90 seat capacity, and I say that the bus is fully tracked, so seats can be moved evenly. They're not drilled into the floor where if you pull a seat out, you have to essentially reseat the whole bus utilizing the drill or flooring. This is a tracked seat bus, so if you want to have high school and you need more hip to knee, we could take a row of seats out, respace it, and you're at 84 passenger, but 90 is the max capacity on this bus. Standard features, which I really like, is front and rear air suspension, air disc brakes, and then of course a pass-through luggage compartment. Because it is a module setup, we can go with the full pass-through luggage, similar to what you would see with an over-the-road coach, MCI, or Van Hool, larger than what a standard school bus pass-through luggage is. So again, we talked about the purpose-built optimal battery weight distribution. Because it is designed specifically for electric, there's no weight issues. Next slide. This is just going into a few more features. Monocoque chassis design is, the monocoque is what an airplane or an F1 race car is built. It's a chassis body all in one. So you don't have a chassis and then you're having frame rails and structure and then you put the body on. It's all one piece. So we talked about the front air ride suspension, the flat floor. So there's no wheel wells. It's 102 inches wide, so it's a little bit wider than what a standard school bus would be. And then of course you have the full disc brakes. Next slide. Charging, we kind of spoke about this. Green Power will only have level 2 or DC fast charge. So again, that is a component that's communicated when you have the conversation for charging. Now, the push for us is obviously to move forward with a combo charging setup, which we're still in the works on. Next slide. This is a little bit, and I think Eddie and some of the other team has talked about with fuel costs or savings for maintenance. I won't go into depth, but it's roughly 40 to 45% savings from diesel to electric based on maintenance costs. You still have the maintenance, of course, of an electric with you just don't have the lube oil filter. We've seen a significant brake savings with the regenerating brake system. The life of the brakes have extended, some up to 2 years and 2.5 years. So it's been impressive. Next slide. So this is the Magellan. It's by Motive Power Systems. Motive has been converting buses for several years. We've deployed several of them within California. They've gone to a BMW lithium ion battery technology, which is significantly improved from the nickel phosphate that they were utilizing. The peak horsepower of 201 is significant for a small vehicle of the E450 chassis setup. They have the level 2 charging with the level 3 fast charge option. So they are not utilizing as a standard feature the combo, but it can be ordered and installed. Just another conversation during the ordering process. But standard would be a level 2 or level 3 option. As I mentioned, it's a type A. So on most grants, anything with the low emission school bus program, the cutoff is 14,000 GVW. This is a 14.5. So that it is a conversation we have with the grant coordinators and the air districts on an option for a type A replacement program on the school bus grant. It's fully ambulatory at 23 passenger. And of course the wheelchairs at 13, which is much smaller capacity or much lower capacity than we would typically do with a wheelchair. But we have a trade-off with the weight of the batteries, of course. And then Motive utilizes the industry-proven battery to validate millions of miles. So Motive has not only the school They have shuttle technology as well as trash truck and delivery vehicles. So their electric technology has proven over the years to be very reliable. I think that's it, Alex. I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Jason. And thank you to all our panelists for their great presentations on electric school buses and available incentives. I realize that we're up on, at the end of our 75-minute webinar, but I just want to encourage attendees, if they do still have additional questions, keep putting them into the chat box or raise your hand. I'm sure our panelists would be willing to stay online for a few extra minutes if there's any other questions that anybody would like to get to. I'd also like to encourage our attendees to follow up with myself or any of our panelists if they have additional questions that come up, and we'd be happy to follow up with you offline. At this point, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the C5 webinar, Electrifying the Central Coast, Leading the Transition to Electric School Bus Fleets. As I mentioned, feel free to follow up if you have any more questions. There's also going to be a recording of this webinar available on the C5 website. With that, everybody take care and stay safe out there, and hopefully wherever you're at, the smoky conditions get a little bit better, and we're all able to breathe a little bit easier. All right, so thank you all, and that's the conclusion of our webinar.